The only services partner I've ever met that's gone whole hog there was actually out of Dubai. I never was able to, validate what he told me he did and talk to a customer, but he was in a very sub-vertical niche. Like it was a vertical inside of a vertical inside of a vertical. His whole thing was, I'm going to come in and save you money on waste. If I save you money on waste, if I can teach how to cut your metal fabrication time down and reduce your waste, I will take my fees from your waste earnings.
Today, I'm learning from Ben Vollmer. Ben is a senior vice president at RSM in the US, responsible for growing their Power Factory offering. He's probably best known in the Microsoft community as the former global director of Microsoft's Dynamics 365 field service business. Ben's a prolific presenter at Microsoft conferences with a reputation for helping partners level up their pricing and delivery models. Ben and I have a fascinating discussion about the evolution of pricing and how Microsoft partners and customers might exchange value. Traditionally, partners have delivered services and charged based on a timesheet and a rate card. How is that model changing? One option we discuss is outcome-based pricing. But do customers really want outcome-based pricing? There are challenges here too. We also pull apart the user story point estimation and pricing approach that my business, Superware, uses. Lastly, we ask whether blended teams are necessary for success and how customers should eventually assume full ownership of the applications that their partners build. So Ben, why is it you think that pricing drives the whole culture of a Microsoft Partners organization? That sounds an outrageous statement to me.
So pricing, I think, does two things. One is it establishes value. When you think when you go to the store and you buy something, the price of something, if it goes up, you're like, gee, do I really want to buy that? The price is too low. You're like, do I really want to buy that? So pricing is kind of, for me, it's the physical manifestation of me exchanging something of value for something I'm getting in value.
Right.
As where those two things need to come kind of in sync with each other becomes, I think, the critical thing that makes pricing fun and interesting. My background's mainly doing software pricing, so I love the software pricing side. I actually read the licensing guide, Neil, and love it. So,
remember, it's only a guide, Ben. It's not a contract. So,
well, it's actually fun. Neil, why'd you got to do that to me, man? Don't write you trap. But pricing is, for services partners, it's also the manifestation of a cost of goods sold and how do you scale your offering to customers. But what most people, especially some of the smaller practices, realize and have learned is that your evaluation as a company, when you decide you're going to go into M&A mode and you want to find a suitor for your business, it's time to take your baby over, your pricing model is one of the single largest drivers in your valuation and how you get sold to your next case. So right. It's a kind of a complicated thing because it's a lot of moving pieces, but the outcome is really customer value of what I'm giving in exchange for it. And the second one is when I sell my company, what am I getting?
Okay. Well, can we talk through that? Because I'm today running Superware. We're just getting started. We're 20 people today. We're building applications for an industry. We're hoping to sell those on a subscription basis. We are selling those on a subscription basis. We're also got a services team and we're selling implementation services. So traditional systems integrator. And 5 or 10 years, I'd like to pull up sticks and sell this whole thing to somebody who values the business more than I do. How should I think about pricing? What we're pitching today is an ISV application on a subscription basis. And I listened to a podcast recently called Acquired, and it was the history of Microsoft. It's a 3-part podcast series. Each one's about 4 hours long. It's an awesome, in-depth look at the history of Microsoft.
And that was driving from your house to Melbourne, right? That was
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just a trip around the neighborhood. And I talked about the pricing of Windows in the early days and how Microsoft left a lot of money on the table. They priced quite low in order to capture market share. Once you have a substantial market share, now you can ratchet pricing whichever which way you want to go. Should ISVs be thinking about that as a pricing strategy? And what's the future of pricing for services?
I would say a couple things here. One is, by the way, I was actually blessed when I joined Microsoft. She just retired, but she was there when Windows was delivered on pallets to customers, like before the enterprise agreement existed. So she actually has customers where they delivered pallets of Windows to her, because they didn't have any way of buying it at a corporate level, so they would just deliver a pallet of Windows. Not the kind you opened, but the kind you used. When she told me that story, I kind of was like, but you think about this for a second, though. I mean, look at what pricing. Let's look at business models. Okay, so what is it that their business wants? They want predictable revenue. They want predictable outcomes. They want predictable everything. And things that are predictable tend to get a higher valuation than things that are unpredictable.
Right.
So if I have a partner and I'm a partner and I deliver services, I think every partner I see they go through a feast and famine. Like I get a big project and I suck up every resource on the planet and I feast like there's no tomorrow, and then I'm dead broke.
Yeah.
And then I feast like there's no tomorrow, and then I'm dead. You've seen it so often that
Yes.
it kind of hurts your head. The part of the future, I think, is going to have predictable revenue. It means they're going to have micro vertical expertise. So, yeah, you can call it an ISV, you can call it an accelerator, you can call, I don't care what the internal buzzwords you use because what is missing product for that micro vertical? Okay, you got a product for that micro vertical, right?
Yes. Yep. We got a product from Micro Vertical. It's doing well.
Okay, perfect. First thing. Um, I think the days of implementation, as we think about implementation, like you and I started doing CRM in its various ways, shapes, and forms back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
2006 for me.
Okay, well, it was before that for me. Damn it. But like I can remember like when CRM Live came out, CRM Online, people were like, "Oh my God, Microsoft's going to take our business." And I'm like, if your value in life is running setup.exe, you need to go reevaluate your values.
I was running a CRM hosting company at the time. So I had CRM 3.0 running on virtual servers at Rackspace, and Microsoft announced CRM Live. And yeah, I had a few nervous nights, but it actually worked out really well in the end.
There's actually a partner I know that still has customers on their own internal hosting because their SLAs are so onerous that they can't get them off their competitor they're hosting them with now. Back in the day, it was you installed software. Well, Microsoft's kind of done away with like spin up. Okay, we talk about customer engagement. The Power Apps. Oh, let's look at Business Central. Right, that thing you spin it up and it's basically up and running almost immediately.
Right.
Okay. And you look at how they're taking the FNSC apps, they're kind of breaking them into pieces and they're making them. So the days of coming in and spending 6 months doing a needs assessment followed by a 6-month kind of sprint zero of an agile, or I'm sorry, waterfall methodology, those days are kind of over.
Agreed. Yeah, I haven't seen those for a while.
I think what you're going to see is you're going to see micro vertical. You're going to see managed services, which says, okay, I'm going to take this and do this for you over a period of time. And you're going to see enablement. Think about the average partner you work with. How much time do they actually spend training the end users?
Not a lot. Yeah.
I mean, you've worked for some big companies over the years, and you've worked with some fun ones over the years. Think about some of the projects you've done. What was the first thing you cut when the project timeline got squeezed?
Well, traditionally it was change management, right, and testing, and then whatever you work backwards from the end of your timeline, and those were the things that got cut first.
Change management,
training.
Yeah. Oh, in user training, you can do that yourself. Well, we'll do a super user training and let the super users then train people to do this.
Yeah.
Again, from my perspective, that's the wrong way to do it. You think about how clients do projects today. It's come in and train us. Like we just did a project for a customer, very small project. Like muy poquito. Like it was very, very small. But they're deploying a co-pilot for internal knowledge management.
Right.
And the entire SOW was come in and train my team how to pull the data out and write a co-pilot so we can show it to our end users.
Right. Okay. So flip the whole SOW backwards.
There's going to be advisory services. I call them managed services. But they're really advisory services, right? Hey, how do we do this? Should we do this or that? The kind of architecture on demand. I think that's where my personal opinion, that's where the model is going. From a pricing perspective, how do we weave pricing that into this piece? Whoever acquires you is going to want what?
Predictable revenue.
Predictable revenue. They're going to want a good client base not going to go anywhere. They're going to want some IP you have. You are basically going to be evaluated almost like a software.
Yeah.
And so I think actually, my perspective, pricing is the manifestation of the acquisition, if you will, the M&A conversation. I mean, think, what do you pay for a gallon of milk?
Well, first of all, I have no idea what a gallon is.
Sorry. 2 liters of milk or a liter of milk or whatever the You live in the
So
U.S. Don't give me a lot of crap.
so we buy 2 liters of milk at a time. So there's 4.5 liters in a gallon, and we buy the fancy stuff, the cream on the top, but it comes from a nice local farm, and it's $5 for 2 liters in our local supermarket. So that's let's call it $12 a gallon.
Okay.
That's 12 Australian. So yeah, no, be $9 American, something like that. Does that sound expensive? I don't even know how that.
It's got paid. If that farm was to sell its milk, like I grew up in a dairy area where students had wineries and or vineyards and dairy farms. The milk got sold by the pound, and it got sold by the pound so dirt cheap it wasn't funny.
Right.
Like, I remember buying a gallon of milk and I'm like, this is like 3.5 pounds or 4 pounds, and like I know what my friends get paid for a gallon of milk, and like the disparity was huge.
Yeah.
And that's almost the same thing we're looking at when we're trying to sell services, right? I mean, like right now today, most services firms are, meat puppet based. How many meat puppets do I have? What's my hourly rate for a meat puppet? And how do I sell that meat puppet?
Can't call people meat puppets, man.
Damn it, okay. Well, okay, fine. Meat sacks? All right. All right. Well, so most consulting firms today are based on how many people they have. And you pay X number of dollars for a junior, Y number of dollars for a senior,
Yeah.
Z number of dollars for a director, principal, right? I don't think customers want that. I think what customers actually want is they want the outcome. Now, here's the funny rub, by the way. This is kind of I haven't seen it on the services side. I have seen it on the software side, so I can talk about outcome-based pricing. So you say, hey, what they really want is the outcome. Oh, just do outcome-based pricing. That's what servitization, outcome-based pricing. Here's where it gets interesting. Customers don't want to share their money. I mean, well, and I say that kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, but if you think about this for a second, if you can come in and save a customer $1 million, why not split that $1 million with the customer? Hey, customer, I'll come in and save you $1 million on your processes, and I'll go halvesies with you, right? And I won't charge anything for deployment, but I'm going halves. I believe in my product. You're going to find almost exclusively customers going to say no.
That's right. Yeah, I've tried those approaches. For example, in this superannuation industry in Australia, which is like a private retirement accounts, we've proposed pricing based on funds under management. So
Yep.
these funds have billions of dollars of people's money invested in markets, and they measure themselves like how many tens of billions of dollars, how much growth did I get? I mean, what's the FUM growth year over year?
Yep.
Or they can measure themselves based on number of members, right? I've got 1 million members or I've got 2 million members. And I said, okay, well, we'll tie our pricing to either the number of members you have or the funds under management that you have, rather than the number of users of the software. And they're not so keen. And I don't quite know why. I'm trying to tie my price to their value, but it's not working out so well. They're not as receptive to it as I had anticipated.
Although now there is exceptions to that, by the way. So let's think that exception to that is if I was selling to a facilities management firm in Australia. Not that I've done that before, but I've read the book on it once. I might want to price my product by the amount of square footage that customer has under management, and then notch that directly to the number of square foot they have, or square
Yeah,
meter. Oh, my bad.
I got you.
So my question is, what's the difference there? What's the difference between assets under management versus number of square feet that an FM company?
Yeah, very similar. Like it's a key metric. They both want to grow the amount under management, or whether it's area or funds.
But there's one nuance difference.
Oh, okay.
There's one nuance difference there, which is square footage under management is a direct chargeable activity to the tenants. So
Yes.
if you read your lease, it says, anything that's directly attributable to your unit, you're going to pay. We might pay it for you, but you're going to pay it eventually. Okay. So if I charge you per square footage, it effectively comes out of the company's bottom line and becomes a line item on the lease that gets signed and you get passed over to it. So companies are actually willing to do that when you can align with their bottom line.
Yeah.
And that's a great way. But again, that's not outcome pricing. That's not outcome driven pricing, Neil. That's just
It's
a new
that's
pricing
just
model.
right. You're right.
So if you can figure out how your interests align with your customers' interests. So an example might be you're helping people write grants. If your hard cost goes directly against the grant, guess what? The grant receiving organization has to write it. But if you can be broken up and attributed to each one of the sub grantees,
Yes.
you become a cost that gets passed on through to the sub grantees.
Yep.
We haven't done enough experimentation there. We have not done enough experimentation there in that section. We've gotten kind of outcomes are the next thing to do, but we haven't said, okay, so if you take like units, assets under management, is there something you can do that allows your app to be able to be a passed on cost to somebody in their contract? If you can, I think then you have a better chance of being successful with that than you will under a true outcome driven.
Yeah. So the cost per member is an interesting idea because there's a cost to serve, and every fund wants to reduce the cost of service. They want to make themselves more efficient so that they don't have to charge fees. They want to reduce the fees that they charge to members. That helps them attract more members, right? If they're a low cost fund. So if we can say our cost is $1 per year per member, and the fund knows that they charge $100 per year per member, then they know that we're 1% of their operating costs. It's software to do all the complaints management, all of the customer relationship management, all the marketing and engagement. Then they've got a much more accurate assessment of the cost of our software versus the income that they receive. And that's receptive, but they're not quite willing to go there yet. And I can see why, because if they acquire another fund, suddenly I say, hey, your software costs have doubled. And they might not have rolled out our software to the other half of the new fund yet. And so it
Yeah.
gets a little, and outcomes, like we've been selling, Salesforce optimization software for a long time. I've never sold a deal that said, hey, tell you what, if we double your revenue next year, we want a share of that. That's the outcome you're aiming for with your CRM implementation. If you double your revenue, we'll charge you based on the success of our software implementation. It's never happened.
There's one partner I know that's up in the Atlanta area that's doing it with a smaller subset of
Right?
his customers. Like if I can reduce your MQL cost, if I can increase your SQLs, if I can reduce, increase your velocity in your initial stages, I'm willing to take some of my services fees and roll them over into that as an outcome driven.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, that's the only and he and I have had long conversations about it. And I love the man to death. And if he's listening, Van Halen still sucks. But he he's doing it for a portion of the fees, not for all of his fees. And I think it becomes kind of a way for the customer to say, is this going to work or not? And it's a way for him to make sure he kind of hedges his bets and covers his costs. So I think there is not. Do I think customers are ever going to go 100% that way? No way. But do I think there's going to be some level of it in some degrees? I think it's very possible.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I had a customer recently, a small nonprofit organization, maybe 50 people. And previously, when somebody registered for one of their events, they would just type in an email address in the registration form and maybe a first name or something. And in their old CRM, they had hundreds of thousands of people. When they looked at all the duplicates, 80% of them were duplicates because people would register for the next event and they type in their email address again. And that would just create another contact in the old CRM and another one and another one. And if I came to 12 events, I would have 12 contact records. We said, okay, well, let's look at Dynamics 365 customer insights journeys. And we will have people register once using a Power Pages registration site, and they'll create a profile. You'll capture their dietary, you'll capture their accessibility, you'll capture their email subscription preferences, and there'll be one contact record. Fantastic. And if we had some kind of pricing based on an outcome associated with that, better data quality, increase in memberships, we need to find a hard benefit to attach our value to. We could have been winning, but here we are 12 months later, the CEO has come in and said, I hate profiles. This is awful. People don't want to have to type in a username and a password to register an event. Take it all away, please. Go back to the old model. Right. Okay. Well, um, despite me pointing out that Eventbrite and Meetup and every event platform on the planet uses a username and password before you can register for an event. She's the expert and wants to unwind it all. And so if you want to have a value exchange based on outcomes, you need to be really clear what the outcome is and how it's measured.
It's actually funny. The only services partner I've ever met that's gone whole hog there was actually out of Dubai. I never was able to, validate what he told me he did and talk to a customer, but he was in a very sub vertical niche. Like it was a vertical inside of a vertical inside of a vertical. His whole
Right.
thing was, I'm going to come in and save you money on waste. If I save you money on waste, if I can teach you how to cut your metal fabrication time down and reduce your waste, I will take my fees from your waste earnings. And
Okay.
he and
Right.
that was he knew the industry well enough to be able to say this is where it goes. I think that's an outcome pricing model that actually works. Now, I
Yeah.
do think what you're going to see more of, though, and should see more of, is think about, and I'm going to use an example that people are going to hate me for, and I'll accept the hate later. You remember when Xbox first came out? Had those Xbox points. You bought so many points, and it was kind of a quasi currency, but every country had a different point value. So
Yeah.
it was 40 points in Australia, and it was 55 points in Canada, and it was 22 points in the UK, and it was 35. Like everybody had a different point value for everything. I do think seeing some sort of like menu of services, like I'm going to come in and provide a 2-day workshop. That's X number of points. I think if I'm going to provide a services offering of a tune-up, that's Y number. I think those are the kind of things that are easy pickings. So if you're a services partner today, I don't know, the whole subscription model thing scares me. Okay, take your after sales, after deployment, after delivery projects and deploy them, and then figure out how do you monetize critical report writing. Oh my god, I'm dating myself. I'm sorry, Power BI reports, or how do I monetize coming in and do SQL cleanups, or additional reporting, or kind of build some offerings that are kind of point based. Say, Mr. Customer, I'll come in and do this. When I was at a professional services firm 25 years ago, we had people in the office who we call them milk runners. Like they basically had, meal delivery milk guys, right? They basically just had a couple customers. They just kind of did a milk run around every. Why not package that up and say, Mr. Customer, pay us, and we'll do a milk run, and we'll do these services for you all the time.
Yeah.
I think that's a. If you want to get into this without going whole hog, there's an easy way of doing it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty close to what we do today from a services perspective. So we have points. We call them user story points, right? So we estimate your requirements and story points. When we build a team that we think, oh, a team like this should be able to get 50 points done in a 2-week sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore the cost per point is about $2,000. And so if you've got a 5-point story or 5-point requirement, then that's going to be 10 grand. Is it worth it or is it not? Like it's going to cost 10 grand to solve that problem. Is it a 10 grand problem? That's up to you, Mr. Customer. Great. You want to go for it? Off we go. We put that story into the backlog and we get it done. And we just keep rolling like that. And the customer knows the cost per point. Now, how I staff the team, do I staff it with a lot of senior people who can get a lot of points done in a 2-week sprint? I could, but it's very expensive for me.
Yeah.
Or do I staff a lot of junior people who maybe can't go as quickly, and to get the 10 points done or 5 points done, it's going to take me 4 weeks. So we're making all those kind of normal trade-offs, blended teams of experience and inexperience. And it seems to work reasonably well. But there's a selling point to executives go, what the heck is a user story point? Why are you estimating like this? But once they get over that, once they get their heads around it, they seem to enjoy it.
That's a good way. That's a great. That for me, Neil, is a great way of doing it. Like that. That is a phenomenal way of doing it in a way that makes sense. Yeah. So you're coming up with 20 years doing this. So you're close, right? Think about it.
Yeah.
How many times have you done a project and they're like, well, this has to be done this exact way, and you're like, I'm going to break a system because you want something done that exact way. And then you push the project manager out and they kind of go, no. And then you get in front of the executive and the executive is like, oh, I don't really care how it's done as long as it's done. And you're like, I just spend so much time and money doing this for nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what your user story points gives you. It gives you the ability to say that feature is worth X number of dollars. Do you actually want to spend that there?
Yep.
I mean, what's the iterative payback? And I think a lot of partners, well, first of all, a lot of customers don't know why they're doing something. I mean, think about how often you've done a project. And you're like, did somebody just wake up one day and go, "Gee, I want to do this"?
I've had a few of those.
Um, I think we all have. But if you put value associated with what the value coming back is, because if I could spend, okay, so let's say I take 10 user story points, right, which is an expensive feature, right?
Yep.
And then I take those feature points and I'll go, Mr. Customer, yeah, but that's going to return back to you this. But if I come over and I do 2 user story points, I can get you all of this. So let's start with the 2 user story points and get that all done first, and then come back and look at the 10 user story once we get some return on investment.
Yeah, that's exactly how we try and approach it. Let's get some quick wins with the small ones, but also look at the big ones. And can we split them up? Because I bet you if we split them into smaller rocks, like the old asteroids game,
Mm-hmm.
I bet you not all of them are as equally valuable. So if you take that 10 and split it up into 5 2-point stories, 3 of them are probably really valuable. Let's get those done. The other 2, no, I'm not too sure. Let's kick those down to the bottom of the backlog and we'll take a look at them in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
It seems to be working okay.
But I think you're an anomaly in that. And so the thing for other partners who are listening is, how do I start wrapping that in my conversation? And how do I start having those conversations with my customers? The other thing I would say is you talk about Scrum teams in general, right?
Yeah.
At some point, we need to start enabling our customers to be able to take these projects on themselves. Again, if our business value is running setup.exe, we're in the wrong business. If our business value is doing the same forms and the same thing something I could do, we're kind of, so the business value of what we're doing and how do we okay, this is 10 points to do this story. 5 of these points are going to come from your internal teammates. 5 of these points are going to come from my team.
Yep.
We were talking earlier about a project I'm on where there's actually about 4 different partners in there providing staff augmentation services.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it working?
It actually is working. I think one of my colleagues will probably want to kill me when he hears you say that out loud. It's working in that you're able to deliver projects. Then when we roll off, they have people on we're providing the architects and the high level designers and some testers, but the everyday coding and changing that has to happen as this app continues to evolve, they've effectively taken that in house. And
Right.
so it becomes, I don't care whether in-house is actually in-house or in-house is in-house view plus a GSI in the background. That's both. That's a form of in-house for you. Just go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think these blended teams are essential today. I'm really glad when a customer says, look, we've got it from here. Thanks very much. You've taken us through the hardest stuff for the first 20 sprints. There's still 10 more sprints worth of work to do, but my team's got it from here. Like, awesome. I want you to own it because I know that system is going to be fed and watered and maintained and enhanced and live for a long time, rather than the olden days of, well, all the funding dries up as soon as the project goes live and nobody touches the system for the next 10 years until we rip it out and replace it because the requirements have evolved and the system didn't. And we're going to rip it out and start from scratch. Like, that's heartbreaking.
I just had a call with a potential customer last week. Who's going to own it after we leave?
Oh, great question.
And they went, I'm like, okay, guys, I don't think we're a good fit for you. I'm like,
if you're listening on a audio podcast, Ben is looking around the room trying to find an executive to own the system. Pregnant pause.
or 30 seconds of awkward silence.
Yeah.
There's got to be some ownership of that thing going forward. And I think if you don't have the ownership going forward, you don't have somebody to maintain it internally, you're going to be paying, higher rate than you should. And especially as you get into, I think, you look at like ERP, people go, well, it's different. It's a strange beast, and IT really. There's a use case there. I understand. Even CE, I understand some of those use cases too. When you get Power Apps, I mean, yeah, there's some things IT may or may not know, things they may or may not touch, but like it's part of the Microsoft platform. It's part of the things they do every day. It should be something that they're
Yeah.
used to doing. So I think it's a foregone conclusion that you should figure a way to enable and take ownership of things as you.
Okay. So just to bring us home with the pricing discussion, the way you see it is going to be lots more vertical specialization, micro vertical segments. Like you said, some value that's evolved from just a software subscription license, maybe attached to the outcome or the value that the customer is getting, and at the same time, services evolving as well from away from just selling timesheets towards some kind of subscription model, and how we judge what a customer can get for the ongoing subscription they're paying for. Whether they want to use points or something unlimited or some kind of constraint on the services you get within a time period. You see that shifting as well. Any other big changes that you think partners of the future need to think about when it comes to their pricing model?
Well, again, I think the three things there: market IP, enablement, enablement. If you don't have enablement on your price sheet, you're not offering enablement. Yeah, knock it off. Go figure out a way to deliver enablement.
That's a critical one. I don't have in my organization today anybody who I'd consider a great trainer, right? Who can train end users, who can train customers developers, who can train customer system administrators. That's a key capability I need to invest in. Thank you for that. Yeah, good.
Yeah, but you go back to training for a second, though. I mean, I started in a product called Goldmont, which is a CRM product from the knots, if you want to call it that, right? And I actually think we got more work from our training team than we gave our training team. Like we had public. It was actually I worked at a small gold mine reseller and had the glass wall, and I was the first person on the other side of the glass wall, so I got to see everybody come in and fill the classroom up. But we did a twice a month, 2 and 3 day long, intro to gold mine, advanced gold mine. So
Right.
it was a week long, twice a month, open classroom. I don't know, it was $1,000, $1,200 to go. It was money, but it wasn't like a ton of money. Um, I think we made more from that one employee than we did from any other employee we had. And what's funny is the woman who did the training for us was not technical. It was actually, I mean, I remember being on the technical team and everybody kind of made fun of the trainer because she didn't know what she was actually. She knew the clicks to follow and how to do the clicks, but she wasn't like if you ask her a question, she like about 14 times a day I get interrupted. Hey Ben, how do we do? And you do like a micro consulting organization right there. But
Yep.
yeah, partners we made. I mean, we did most of the Microsoft, of course, Microsoft Learn the documentation for CRM. We ended up writing quite a bit of that. I mean, we
Yeah.
wrote.
Right. Okay.
And so it's one of those things where don't think of it as I just got to do it. Think of it as enablement drives my customers. If you had a Power Apps for Beginners class, you know, and you offered it to the public, even in where you live now, you'd still get a once a month, 3 to 4 people show up and pay a couple $1,000 to go through their class, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Like, there's the app in a day offering is still very popular. I'd say the couple of partners in Australia who offer regular Power Apps in a day or dashboards in a day and
Yep.
all the variants, they're pretty successful, right? They've got a lot of projects and they do a lot of app in a day sessions. Now, is it a coincidence that they have
No,
a good pipeline and a healthy bunch of consultants and a healthy pipeline of projects? Probably not a coincidence. It's probably causation in there somewhere.
there is. So again, micro vertical IP. I know assets under. I know. I don't know anything about Australian retirement accounts, but I know Australian retirement accounts. dead cold. I know member-driven organizations dead cold. Here's what I know. I can offer you kind of a turnkey. Here it is. Enablement. I want to help your team get the most out of this. Enablement could be end-user enablement. It could be technical enablement. And then lastly, it's kind of that managed services. How do I put together an offering that allows me to stay engaged with that customer? Backlog as a service, which is going to come to sprint teams, or it could be, further enablement, or it could be consulting. But think about this for a second. If you take field service, which is my old baby, right? And you fire that puppy up with configuration, you can get a field organization up and running with that one single custom entity if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And you'd probably meet 80 to 89% of needs. You're not doing consulting at that point. You're not going in there saying, so Neil, so how do you want to do that again? What's the purpose of that? You're going to say, Neil, other organizations do it this way. We're going to do it this way. You want to do it some other way? Great. You're paying me time and materials to do it. But this is the way we're going to do it. And I can fix the cost, fix the price, fix the deliverable, fix everything for you. But I think the days of coming in and saying, what do you want? How do you want it? Those are all over. Micro vertical, enablement, then after enablement, after go live, some sort of service that helps us, the point-based system, keep them alive and engaging.
Yep. Yeah, awesome. Well, we're today, I think Superware's got half of those things going, and there's a few things to work on. I really enjoyed this conversation today, Ben. It's been amazing. If people want to find out more about you and get in touch and follow your work, where's the best place for them to reach out?
I treat LinkedIn like a 12-year-old treats Instagram. So feel free to reach out for me on LinkedIn. And ping me on LinkedIn. That's one of the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure your LinkedIn profile's in the show notes. And thanks so much for joining us. Thanks to Ben Vollmer for joining me today on Practice Leading. As always, in his own inimitable style, Ben shared some nuggets that I'm going to take away and noodle on some more. Firstly, the evolution of pricing models. To be honest, I don't know what the future holds for the exchange of value between Microsoft customers and partners. Today, some kind of time-based pricing, although imperfect, seems pretty simple and acceptable to most customers and partners. Value-based pricing sounds so much better, but implementing it in practice is much harder than it sounds. Secondly, customers want empowerment. As Superware grows, we're going to have to add an empowerment capability to our portfolio. We already work pretty closely with our customers in blended teams, and we strive to upskill them and ensure they can be self-sufficient. But, to be honest, we don't have a training team, and we couldn't easily run in-a-day training classes right now. I'd like to address that opportunity in the next year or so. Lastly, focusing on micro verticals. Right at the end of our conversation, Ben advised us to find and focus on micro vertical segments. Create products and offerings for them that require little configuration to implement, instead of rocking up with a whiteboard and some sticky notes and asking, okay, so what do you want us to build for you today? Superware is already focusing on micro vertical segments, and I'm confident it's a bet that will pay off. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Practice Leading and found it useful. If you did, please follow the Practice Leading page on LinkedIn, where you can leave comments on each episode or a follow-up question for our guests. Just search LinkedIn for Practice Leading and follow the page. Until next time, keep experimenting.